Guys, huge video today. So we're going to talk about the most toxic synastry and composite chart aspects that exist, in my opinion. So have you ever wondered why a relationship can feel very magnetic, just beautiful in a lot of ways, but then also super destructive at the same time? I think we've all probably been, or at least observed, a relationship like this, where there's a lot of good and even out of this world type of energy, but it also can kind of pull us into our internal lower energies, right? So astrology shows us exactly which aspects make love the most toxic. So today I'm going to break down the top ones based on what I've seen over the years with clients and in my own life with people I know. So let's get into it. So first one is Moon-Pluto hard aspects. So I have to take notes while I'm doing this as usual. Okay, so what happens when in synastry when one person's moon is either conjunct, square, or conjunct, square, or opposite the other person's Pluto, is that there's this compulsive energy in the relationship, this very psychological undertone, and it can feel very inescapable and revealing, like you see through the other person, right? And the moon person can feel very emotionally naked. I've actually had one of these situations happen where I was the moon person, she was the Pluto person, or my 21-degree Sag moon was conjunct her 21-degree Pluto in Sag, and she would just start crying around me all the time. I'm not we just meet up somewhere public and start talking normally. I'm probably just joking around. I'm Sag moon, and she would just like have like little tears come out. Like that's the Pluto. That's how strong the Pluto is, right? So these relationships, awaken raw feelings. There can be a fear of abandonment or trauma. In the case of my example, this girl had a lot of trauma with her mother and her family, and somehow being around me would just like make her think of it, or like it would just naturally come up, right? So the relationships that can become toxic with Moon Pluto, can have like a lot of jealousy, like one person or both people trying to control the others, like almost like a power struggle. And the conjunctions, right? When it's like what I have, there's like this real heaviness, and with Pluto kind of sinking into sadness, which is the Pluto person that is like can become very sad. Like I said, triggered by the moon person, and then the moon person can also feel very naked. When it's opposite, there can be like a push and pull dynamic, and the same energy, but more of a projection. And then I would say squares are the most volatile, and probably like if I had to just have one for this list, it would be squares, but I wanted to include them all. Just full of fights, power plays. Yeah, just it's a lot. So obviously it depends on a lot more than just one synastry aspect, but the bond itself can feel like punishment, but also like the person like the people are being saved. So it can be very, very difficult for this type of relationship to break away from this, even when it's destructive. So there's a lot of healing that needs to happen at a subconscious psychological level. So in terms of examples, I wanted to bring some examples. So I took some notes on different things I remembered. I already gave you guys one. So let me just, I wrote these all down. So I said, yeah, so he couldn't understand why his partner grew sad around him until he studied their synastry. Yeah, so yeah. So she would always, she would basically always get sad around him, like for no reason, like when otherwise like things are pretty good, like there'd just be like she would just go into these deep periods of sadness that he didn't really understand. And then we saw the astrology. Okay, let's see. Yeah, this other person like said that that there's this like every fight would become like nuclear almost, and that the guy basically knew her insecurities and used them and like kind of weaponized them, and but then they would like after that cling to each other very tightly, and sort of like what's it called, a trauma bond, where they were convinced that the drama meant that they loved each other, destined to be together. So yeah, okay. Next one is Venus square Saturn. So let me write this down. So Venus square Saturn. So one person's Venus is square 90 degrees, or doesn't have to be exactly 90 degrees, around 90 degrees. The other person's Saturn. So basically, Venus person in this situation is longing for attention and affection, but the Saturn tends to make more of a cold response, sometimes even rejection. So it can be a very beautiful energy. Like a lot of people that are married have Venus aspecting Saturn in some way, whether it's in the composite or even conjunction or a square or an opposition or a quincunx. Like you'd be surprised, but it just means that those relationships take longer to work out, and it can when you don't have enough actual soul love between the two people to like take the time to allow it to work out. It can make the Venus person feel like very unloved, very unworthy, very small, and like they're chasing validation that seems like impossible to get. And the Saturn person can just feel very uncomfortable and burdened. Like a fear of vulnerability, like the Venus person is like demanding so much. But overall, it can just create sort of a cold dynamic where there's not that much vulnerability and that much softness and that much smiling and ease of affection. That's the word. And yeah, so over time, so the affection can become conditional, even withheld, and sometimes the Venus person internalizes this belief that they have to like earn their love, right? It's not conditional, or it's conditional. They have to earn it through suffering. So, like I said, these relationships can endure, but and they do get better over time if the people are willing to put in the work and be patient and deal with the restrictions that these bring up at the start, because Venus and Saturn together equals marriage, like being able to get through all the really tough things. But it can feel very heavy, almost like joyless, almost like a business transactional type thing. So in terms of examples, yeah, I've had clients, several who have talked about this. It's like this constant begging for affection and not getting it, never being told you're beautiful, even years in, and then there's this constant theme of like the Saturn partner pulling away, and then the Venus partner trying harder and harder. But sometimes it works out, like if there's other better other good aspects. So then another example is, and this is like what I see a good amount with this, is that this is very good for loyalty, but sometimes but I've seen how the loyalty replaced the passion, if that makes sense. So it's like this one is less toxic than a lot of the other ones because it doesn't have that explosive element, but you could see how psychologically it could be, right? Like it can like if it could feel like for like the Saturn person is there out of some out of obligation, not because of wanting the other person. But obviously astrology, you need to look at everything a lot deeper than just the surface, and there's way more. That's why you need to get a compatibility report from me if you're interested to know more. So next is Mars square Mars. Let me just write that down. So obviously, this one, when one person's Mars is square 90 degrees, the other person's Mars. This is when two people clash, right? I mean, if this video is about most toxic, you're obviously gonna have Mars square Mars. Mars is the assertiveness function. It's how you move in the world and in your life, right? Also has a lot to do with sexuality, and especially in a relationship context. So you can imagine, and it's the drive. So there's tons of passion in these types of relationships, but it often becomes very combative. A lot of times their style, their conflict resolution style is not the same, and but it can be very, very, like, what's the word, like, very sexy, but what's the word in French? Like, you have this kind of like I've seen couples with this where they fight, like insane fights. Like I remember my friend Aries, dating another Aries, and they had this square too, and they would just like have the most insane, like, literal, it was like it was like two Tauros like charging at each other. But then they would make up, and I mean I mean that's just what he would tell me, is that they would just like have sex for like entire days. So it's just this exhausting cycle of fighting and making up, and you look at them sometimes and you're like, are these arguments like the foreplay? Like, is it, like, is this like, but like the arguments are like, and this is from seeing it from several different perspectives. Like, it's not light stuff, it can be real heavy. But because Mars isn't like that necessarily, it depends on the Mars signs. In this case, it was Taurus and Aquarius. But I've also seen Scorpio and Leo, and how that one was bad, because the Scorpio Mars would just destroy the just like psychologically, like destroy the Leo Mars. But anyways, so this one, it's just very hard for compromise. There's little room for it. It's like both people want to be the leader, neither wants to yield. Like small disagreements, like what to eat, what to watch, where to go, anything like that can become like major conflicts. And so unless there's other aspects that are more grounding, or good Mercury, it can just like be very, very explosive. And then Mars is that first instinct, and then you're wondering like, okay, so it's kind of like the energy between two people having like a big hue of Aries, and sometimes Aries can just be like, shit, like, why, like, I just exploded for no reason. Why did I explode? Or like Mars square Moon in natal chart. So like, just passion, like equating passion and fighting was a big thing I saw. Like going from like just insane amounts of arguing, and then having incredible sex, right? Because it is a good one for sex. And then and then another client of mine, I remember, like, in a compatibility reading, like I think probably 2 years ago, she told me how like they like everything from like playing a board game, or anything that involved any kind of like competition, like even hiking, like when they go hiking together, like it would turn into scream matches. Everything became a contest. So this is not just with romantic. This is like, it's just like that feeling of like not being able to really relax around the other person. So okay, Next is Mercury square Neptune. So far these are all synastry. This one is, goes without saying. I've talked about this in a lot in the context of a natal chart, but communication is very, very important in relationships, as we know. So when you have one person's Mercury square or opposite, the other person's Neptune, communication becomes very slippery and lots of misunderstandings happen. Lots of, paranoia. So a lot, like there could even be outright lies, right? Because when you have Mercury Neptune, there can be lies, half truths, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of times what happens is the Mercury person feels gaslit, and obviously it depends on a lot of factors, but I've just seen that kind of create this this issue between two people, where low level everyday communication, which is Mercury, and conflict resolution, just little things like that get difficult. And there's it just becomes very tiring. And the other, there could be lots of oh, you're doing this behind my back, you're doing that. So, lots of confusion too. And over time, a lot of times the Mercury person stops trusting the words of the Neptune person, and it's like they're living in a fog almost. So, I can think of times where one person where she would talk about how her boyfriend or whatever, or ex, or would tell her one thing, and then the details just wouldn't add up, and she'd start thinking she was crazy, and it was just all just this constant it was during it was in ways that in areas, in situations where there no lie was needed, right? And then another one, talked about how it was a lot of false promises, just kind of selling the dream, saying that one day we're gonna do this, one day we're gonna move in and live in this, we're gonna have this situation, and and it was always like someday, someday this, someday that, and then someday never came. So, yeah. Okay. One second. So next one. I just need to respond to a message real quick. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so next one is Venus-Neptune hard aspects. So Venus, let me write this down for the timestamps. Venus-Neptune hard aspects. So this one is also something I've talked about extensively, but more so around natal in other videos. But, so we have the conjunction, square opposition, quincunx, and just anything really between these two. And basically what happens is that the Venus idealizes the Neptune, right? So it's that whole projecting fantasies of a soulmate onto, and a lot of times it does go both ways, right? And but often, because Neptune represents the ideal, the Venus person can sometimes feel like there can be this kind of coming together of so like just this thought, this is my soulmate, right? This is everything I could ever want, and the Neptune person can kind of, I guess, bask in that that good feeling that comes with being adored, but then it's also a lot of pressure and impossible to live up to. So, yeah. So I would say like conjunctions can feel extremely blissful and aren't necessarily bad. Like I've seen this be very, very beautiful and romantic, but there is that potential for delusionality and falling in love with the potential of the person instead of in the dream of of what it could be and how things could be rather than the reality. Because then when the pink cloud period ends and you see, that, like, whether that's after, like, the first fight, or whether that's just like a matter of time, especially if you have any Neptune, Venus, or Neptune 5th house, 7th house, Venus and Pisces, Pisces planets, 12th house in your natal chart, you're probably used to that feeling of like, if you've like romantically been involved with people, there's this period. It's different for everyone. Maybe it's like, it could be like after 4 weeks of spending every day together, you finally see them for who they are, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like it's like it's like a humanization. It's like they come down from being this Neptunian like divine figure to human. So the squares, this is tough because the squares create a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion and even betrayal I've seen, hidden affairs I've seen. So the square is the toughest one. Although actually, I don't know. I think the oppositions end in disappointment when the Neptune person can't sustain the Venus's image of perfection, which is pretty much always, right? So the Neptune is, the opposition, excuse me, is just like, good luck, But I find that the square is harder. I find that squares in general are more difficult because like oppositions, there's that, it's like a full moon. It's like, it can become very obvious because it's a polarity, it's an opposite. Conjunctions, it's like a new moon, right? But like, the square, it's like a quarter or third quarter moon. So, yeah, like these relationships can feel very karmic, very poetic, very beautiful, synchronistic, have all, the stories of like, oh my God, we met at this time in these circumstances. I wasn't, and it can have all of these. Like I had, I had this one thing. I know I'm just like giving out so many personal examples, but nothing happened. It was a girl that we never even met in person, so that's one. And that's another thing about Neptune, is that in Pisces and in Composite, is that things can happen over the internet. Same with Uranus, but I've really seen it a lot with Pisces, like Composite planets are just like Neptune. But anyways, so we started talking in a very, very strange, out of nowhere way. Like we're from completely different, that's another thing too, it's like it can really distort reality. Like this girl is like very religious, like from the Middle East, right? And like really religious family, and like the way we found each other, like she even had photos on her Instagram, and it just like, it was like, so like Neptune can be like that intuition. And we started, I like randomly felt this urge to message her, and we actually started talking, and it turned out she was like exactly my type, and the astrology was like really, really good. And we met during a day, like, hear this, we met during a day where Venus and Neptune and North Node were conjunct my Sun. That was it, right? At 28 Pisces. And then we talked for a few weeks, but like when I was like I saw our synastry and our composite, and I was telling a student, because I teach astrology 101 for anyone who's interested, and we go through like lots of like real life examples, and I was like, I was showing her, I was like, look, so you can see that this girl's chart, with the synastry with me, that she has her Neptune conjunct my Venus in Aquarius, and then I have and then her Venus in Capricorn is conjunct my Neptune. And then, so not only did we meet on a day where Venus was conjunct Neptune in the sky, we have it going both ways on our chart. My Venus conjunct her Neptune, my Venus conjunct her Neptune, her Venus conjunct my Neptune. Like I think it was pretty much exact degree or very close to it. Then in the composite chart, of course, because like the composite chart is the midpoints. Well, we had Venus conjunct Neptune in the composite chart, of course, right? Because if they're together in the natal, then the midpoints is the composite. They're gonna come together. So in all three, we had Venus Neptune, and it was exactly that. Like you couldn't have had like a more synchronistic, but like I remember telling because this is one of the beauties of astrology and learning it. And I do have a few more openings for students, by the way, just to say it's one-on-one classes, and it's for people at all levels. Not to interject too much, I'll be right back to explain this. And I only do one-on-one, and we work. It's basically like however it becomes like when you do the 50-hour package, only $95 per hour, and each class is however long it goes. I'd say the average is between 3 and 4. Some people do them once every week, some once every 2 weeks, some once every month, and I also offer pay as you go for people who, like, I prefer people to buy the 50, 20, or 10 class packages, but yeah. So regardless, anyways, I was telling my student, and I always become very good friends with my students too, and I'm very, very chill with everything involving, but like really you're gonna become a real legit astrologer if you go with me. Is that I was telling her, I was like, even though this is so synchronistic and so this and that, I will bet you, I would give it about a 5 or 4% chance that because she was going to Ireland for a month, that in a month when I talk to you next, that I'm still talking to this girl. That and it's not anything negative happened. That's just the nature of Venus Neptune, right? But even though I'm saying, like, feeling this way now, and like all these synchronicities that seem so divine, and I was right, it just faded away, right? So that's kind of what happens. I know it's a long story, but it's interesting, right? Like to have all of that happen in one. I feel like certain experiences happen to me as an astrologer, so I can share them with you guys and help you guys learn, right? So besides that, so the big thing here is like when the illusion breaks, Venus feels duped, right? And even if Neptune never lied outright or tried to act like they were it's not like Neptune, like the Neptune energy is like trying to act like, oh, I'm this person, I'm that person. Like it's not always like that, right? It's not that's like they're lying or projecting an image. It's just that's just the natural impact of Neptune. So, yeah, just like examples I've seen is just just like thinking someone was your soulmate, and then finding out that that person was seeing someone else. Yeah, this is a client from a few years ago. She thought that this guy was her soulmate, and then she found out that he was still seeing his ex the whole time, or like kind of like getting back with her, and yeah, shit like that, right? And then another one, would just was like, I've seen it so many times, so it's like hard to like break it down, but just like being convinced, like putting that person on a pedestal, convinced that the person was perfect, and then in the end, it wasn't like anything bad about that person. It just that he wasn't who she thought he was, right? That's the classic, right? He just wasn't. He just never was who she imagined him to be, and that's it. And that can be very hard for the Neptune person. The Neptune person is like, oh my god, like I'm, holy shit, like I'm this like god, or I'm this goddess or whatever, and then so it's very psychologically tough, right? To kind of to have that happen. Okay, next is Mars-Saturn and hard aspects. So let me write down the time. So yeah, so this one. So okay, so Mars, Saturn, hard aspects. Like I said, conjunction, square, opposition, quincunx. I would say that the Mars person can feel very blocked. Sex can feel very blocked. The Mars person can feel very unwanted, and it can put the Saturn person into a position where they feel like more critical. So let me take a little sip of this. So Mars is movement, passion, and Saturn is coldness, restriction. So it's not that a relationship with this can't work. It's just that it can be very, very fucking frustrating. I've seen a lot of sexual libido issues with this one. Even with people who, are very like where there's like a, attraction, when it comes down to the raw sexual impulse, that's when there can be problems. So yeah, there's that feeling of Mars really feeling blocked. It can affect their confidence, and they're feeling like they can just go, right? So the conjunctions, I feel like they can really freeze. They can add like a very serious hue to a relationship and almost like freeze intimacy. Like Saturn puts up a wall, and Saturn just the Mars person like can't move without hitting it, right? The square is more linked to actual direct rejection. That one's pretty tough when you see that Mars square Saturn in Synastry. Yeah. And then I think oppositions is kind of similar, like where it's literally the wall. It's like Mars, the wall, Saturn, boom. So it can just be one's ready while the other one always kind of pushes back, withholds. So what happens and why it could be in the toxic list is that the resentment can kind of get built up in daily life and especially in sex. Like the Mars person can love the Saturn person, but they can feel like they kill their spark. They can feel like whenever the Saturn person's in their aura, they become like way more serious or way less, like way more held back, kind of like a fifth house Saturn natal, or Saturn, aspecting an important planet, personal planet, or angle in the natal chart. So, over time, it's like it can be an anger that kind of grows slowly, the Mars person might lash out or just give up. So, and it can be really tough because there can be lots of other really beautiful and redeeming aspects. So, I think, so the examples I wrote down, just like trying to get close. Every time she tried to get close, she gets shut down, and just like almost like she started to feel like she was like this annoying teenager, and started to even like feel shame for for even wanting him, or like she was doing something wrong for even wanting him, yeah. I've seen it like in a few like really like long, and I've seen it work too, but in the relationships I've seen it work, it's like there were, when they do talk to me, I don't ask like, tell me about sex. they have usually said that it wasn't something that like flowed, because Saturn gets better with time, right? So it wasn't something that necessarily flowed that easily at the start. But I guess like when I think back on at least the two that come to my mind of that, there were other supporting aspects that really helped it out in composite chart in the synastry. Okay, so yeah, another example of this is just like how the Saturn negativity like drained one of my ex-clients' joy. You know, like every time she get like excited for something new, whether it was like a trip or something she thought of, he would just like list every reason why it wouldn't work. You know, sounds very low vibe Virgo, right? And it's like, yeah, she just like eventually broke up with him, or, you know, and it was just like, but he was a really good guy. It was just like he couldn't help himself, you know, and that's the astrology, because it's not like she said like it's like he wasn't like that with other people, you know. So it really like can be dangerous and toxic, because it can put that person into a depression, right? And feeling like losing that desire, enthusiasm for life when you have someone who's just crushing. So, yeah. Okay. Next one. We're gonna stick with a conjunction for this one. So Black Moon Lilith. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let me see the time. Let's talk about Black Moon Lilith conjunct Venus. Okay, so all right, where do I start with this one? So I'm tempted to just be like Black Moon Lilith in general. I guess, yeah. So basically, Lilith isn't a planet. So I mean, I'm sticking to the conjunctions for this, but I'm not saying that the squares aren't in oppositions, aren't effective, right? But when it's like something like the North Node, or you know, Black Moon Lilith, I guess we can talk about hard aspect. Screw it. So basically, so when these two clash, right? Let me change it to hard aspect. We'll just do that. There's this link between love and Black Moon Lilith, which in this context can be very, you know, kind of like the taboo, but also what's rejected, you know, the element that's rejected in a person, but in a relationship context, it can also be like a very kinky energy, very sexual energy. So it can almost like unleash this very lustful type of very erotic kind of connection between people. But also Black Moon Lilith deals with, you know, rejection, right? You know, rejection from the parts of ourselves that are deemed socially unacceptable. So, and it's very, you know, very raw and wild, and kind of like, it's more of that dark sexual archetype, you know, when Venus is like the romantic and harmonious love energy, right? So, so yeah, so what happens is that you know, for the squares, for example, I guess we can start there. Wait, where am I? Let's go. Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Let's just start with conjunction. I'm all over the place. Sorry. So yeah, so basically, there is that kind of like magnetic energy that you know, with the conjunction, right? As I said earlier. So the Venus person can feel very pulled in by the Lilith's, rawness, and just like something very forbidden. And the Lilith person, can feel very seen for the side of herself that she might not show to others, right? But then it can have like it can create kind of like that kind of like Plutonian, Venus and Pluto kind of like power struggles, obsessions, like, jealousy, all that. Because like the Venus can, like the very pure, smooth Venus can kind of soften the Black Moon Lilith, but also there can be like a feeling of like a threatening, right? Of like the sovereignty. So it's very addicting. So like it's usually like people who have these, they experience it, like it's like really like nothing, really compares in a way, right? And I feel like this is like also the same with Mars, or even more intense than Mars, and shit, even with the sun and the moon, like Black Moon Lilith, it just, different parts of your psyche, it just yeah, those connections, yeah, they're just, it's just a different, it's very all or nothing, like no repression, boom. So that, yeah, that brings a lot of intoxicating energy. So it can bring out like the darker sides of people, that they didn't even know existed, especially sexually. Like that's the whole thing with a taboo. So it's less, so yeah, like what can happen here is just like obsession, right? And like where you can't tell if like you're in love or you're in lust, because the lust is at such a high level that, is it addiction, or is this how you're supposed to is this how you're supposed to feel, like on a soulmate level, right? So it's hard to tell. Then with squares, right? Like it's a lot of the same energy. It just feels like the Lilith can feel just like too raw, like too much, right? And opposition, it's very it's similar. It's like the Venus person can idealize but also resist, and the Lilith person can feel a bit judged in those situations. So sometimes what happens is the Venus person tries to civilize and I guess that's the best word I can think of. Yeah, civilize the Lilith person. And then the Lilith person hates that feeling of being shamed for the rawness. And yeah, so there can be like big swing, back and forth swings with these types of relationships. Not like very difficulty leaving each other. Yeah, so I would say that in terms of examples, yeah, I can think of people who, yeah, it's just that energy of like has someone who makes you want things that you didn't even know you wanted or you craved. That obsession, not being able to stop thinking about the other person, like almost like a rewiring of desires, right? Very taboo. And yeah, then like with the square, yeah, just like this really being torn between love and shame, like feeling kind of dirty, like one girl said she felt kind of dirty for wanting this guy, but she adored him. Like there's like almost like no matter what she did, there's something wrong with it, like her love wasn't pure enough or something like that, right? Yeah. And then I've like the main thing I probably heard going both ways is just like like being like this sexual obsession, you know, like being obsessed with that person sexually. But like also like the Lilith person feeling like the forbidden fantasy of that person. So it's like, you know, so it's like going back and forth between like, is this person who I want to be with, you know, like in like a long term, do I see a future with this person, or is this someone where it's just more of like a, you know, physical thing, and it's obviously like way more complicated than just that, but that's kind of what I have observed. All right, where were we? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this one I talked about on Instagram a while ago. So asteroid lust, conjunct Venus or Mars. So this one is a little bit. So this is one that I did research on for years, and I made a video on Instagram like maybe a few years ago, and the comments were insane. Like it was like every single person was like agreeing with me about this rant. Like, and I'm not into like into asteroids like that. I think a lot of the ones that people talk about are bullshit, to be honest, right? Not necessarily bullshit, but I think that let me rephrase. Like Uranian astrology, for example, like I'm not disrespecting that in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying that the idea of like, oh, this random asteroid, like for me, it's like I want to know who discovered it. I want to see how it's been practiced throughout time, right? I want to see many examples of how it works in a chart, and like how luminous is it, right? How much light does it actually reflect to create real power? Because then what happens, this is one thing I teach in my astrology courses, is like when you have when there's all this talk about these asteroids, like this one, that one, there's almost this like sort of narcissism in astrology where it's like when you're just studying your chart, you want to know more and more and more about yourself. Which I mean, narcissism slash you're also learning. That's like, so it's not bad. When I say narcissism, I don't mean narcissistic personality disorder. I mean like just, I guess like when you're learning about astrology as a whole and how it can, you know, obviously you want to know about yourself, but you know, when you're there's a difference between when learning it for yourself, and then you realize how amazing it is, and then you learn about it. That's actually a very normal cycle, right? So I'm not dissing this at all. I feel like everyone starts like that. You learn your chart, but there's just endless ways astrology can go, and I've just seen how certain creators might take advantage of the fact that most people reading their content don't know that much about astrology, and they can just like introduce an asteroid that they don't really know, an asteroid or anything, like any kind of point that they don't really know how powerful, how important it really is. Like in my classes, I talk about the hierarchy of importance, right? Like this is 10 out of 10 important. This is, you know, like 8 out of 10. This is 6 out of 10. This is 4 out of 10. And this, you know, and then there's other things like this lust thing we're talking about here, where it does not matter what house or sign you have lust in. 0 out of 10. Let's get that straight. And same goes for like, I'm not talking about the 4 main asteroids of Juno, Vesta, etc. Right? I'm not talking about those. I've always used Juno especially, and you know, I definitely Ceres, you know, Vesta, Pallas, like are those are not, I'm not talking about those ones. There's a lot of very, very good ones. I'm talking about random ass ones. I can't even think of a name right now. Where, you know, and even those ones might have meanings. It's just that they have to be conjunct. It's like with fixed stars. They only are important if they're conjunct important points. Like I have, you know, Regulus on my ascendant. But if my ascendant was if my ascendant wasn't at the very end of Leo, I wouldn't have Regulus conjunct my ascendant, because it has to be really, really close, you know? Like the president of the USA, whose name I won't say, who most people watching this do not like. He has also, you know, Regulus, the fixed star, on his ascendant, like me. Don't hate me for it if you dislike him. I'm not in politics. And then he also has another of the royal stars, Fomalhaut, on his sun in Gemini, right? And got someone like Pablo Escobar has, he has Aldebaran on his sun. So he has two of the royal stars, and he's born on an eclipse. So it's like, whatever. I'm going down a road that's random. The point is, someone else like Pablo Escobar, he had Antares, which is another of the royal stars, conjunct his midheaven and his sun, both, and then he had his ascendant conjunct Fomalhaut, like exact degree, I'm pretty sure. So that's insane, So that's what gives. That's one of the things that one of the biggest things that gives fame. And you could have a horrible chart and be or not horrible chart. Like you could have a chart like just because you have, and this is a very good example of why celebrities and not that every celebrity has royal stars, no, or it's not like that. And there's more than just those four in terms of like important stars. Spica, a lot of them, right? But it can show why someone has a lot of fame, whether it's like internationally or just within their industry or just a certain aura, but then they could have like a really difficult chart. So you see people like that. Like a lot of presidents and leaders have Regulus rising, but then you look at their charts and you see like a lot of like, I'm not someone to say that just because you have this tough aspect, you're a bad person. I've seen amazing people with the hardest charts, but like, basically like that, it doesn't define them. Like they have that star, that's why they're famous, and then it has nothing to do with how they are as a person. Anyways, okay. So lust conjunct Mars or Venus. Lust, I've just seen it be very related to, and when someone has lust on their rising, or lust conjunct their Venus, or lust conjunct their Mars in their natal chart, it's like, or just like any important point, mainly females. They can become they can become, usually guys, become obsessed with them, or just see them as more sexual than they are. That's a whole different video. I made a video on this in my Instagram a while ago, and like 1 million women commented like, holy shit, like I just checked, I have this, and this is exactly how it is, right? Like it's just like it projects, especially like rising, midheaven, Venus, especially the rising one. Like it just can project an image, because that's how you look, of being someone that wants sex, or that is very sexual, but that doesn't necessarily match up. And some people it does, but it has no, bearing to how they actually are. So when someone's lust is fused with another person's Mars or Venus, there's a lot of that kind of compulsive erotic desire that comes up, right? And the bond is very centered around sex, and it can become kind of like that last one, where it just becomes that obsessive energy around that. And the biggest thing of why it can be toxic is that it can have there can be not much good romantic obsession or romantic connection, but the physical attraction and sexuality is so addictive that eclipses everything. It's like a drug. And then breakups can feel impossible because desire itself and the sexual element is like literally like super glue. Yeah, like I've talked to clients who've had this, right? And just like where it's just about sex, one guy that I did a composite chart, compatibility, composite synastry. Like he, like had this, and it was with a girl that he had that, like, that lust connection with, and there was really this feeling of almost not like hatred, but just knowing that they're not right. That this girl was doing it was very toxic, but very sexy to him, right? So he just couldn't let her go, and so that's kind of the dynamic that I would see, right? Like where it's just like there wasn't really anything built in that relationship, and it's almost like he was like looking like, maybe it's this, maybe it just takes more time. But they didn't have a very good mental connection. They didn't have a very, great spiritual connection. I think age difference, I mean, obviously there's extremes. I don't judge that at all. In fact, astrology, and my chart's a great example. I always have because I have Venus square Pluto, and my Pluto's in Scorpio, I tend to date, like if I date someone my age, it tends to trigger that square. That's what I've noticed, what I thought of. And I'm not saying run away from these things. I don't know. It just tends to, like that, plus the fact that my moon's in Sag, I've always felt more of a, not always, but at least in recent years, felt more connection with the Pluto in Sagittarius, or end of Pluto in Scorpio, where it's out of orb with my Pluto, like the last 5 degrees or so of Pluto in Scorpio. Yeah, mostly Pluto in Sag, because then it doesn't aspect that. But yeah, then obviously I don't want to have the exact, conjunct my 21 Sag moon either, as we saw with that one example. But yeah, so this guy just didn't have much in common with this girl, but they would just, like, the sex was so good, and he saw her as like the sexiest girl in the world, and like just like he just was like obsessed with her in that way, and it just kind of screwed with him, because like I don't think he loved her, or I don't think she loved him, and I think that he was in lust, confusing being in lust with being in love. Okay, so now let's flip over to some composite stuff and then end it. I might try to go for 2 videos in a row if I have endurance today. So, okay, Moon square Uranus in a composite chart. So obviously, where are we at? We are at 5652. So, okay, hold on. So basically, now, as you guys probably know, composite is the combined chart between two people. So when I do a compatibility reading, which anyone can book on my website, jesseinnocentastrology.com, live or recorded, you can also message me at jesseinnocentastro on Instagram, or email me at jesseinnocentastrology.com, or no, jesseinnocentastrology@gmail.com, and I will answer you. Just whatever you guys want. Very reasonable prices, and there's no time limit for the readings. They're recorded, they're private, everything. Confidentiality, obviously, like, just because I talk about different examples, like I don't even remember the faces barely, I just have a memory for pattern recognition. I'm good at remembering things, examples, but I have an ability to kind of like X out the faces. And there's just, I talk to so many people, how am I supposed to remember, and I'm happy I don't, because it is sacred stuff. And people tell me very deep secrets, and the reason they tell me is because I never repeat them. Even if I'm living, even when I was living with my ex-girlfriend for 5 years, like, if someone told me something in confidence, I wouldn't even tell her, So that's how seriously I take that as an 8th house sun, Mercury. Okay, so composite, that's the combined chart between two people, right? We have a composite chart with every human in the world. So I'm just gonna give, like, I guess maybe 3 of these, or do I want to give, like, let me think. Actually, let me give one more synastry. Let me give one more synastry, because I didn't talk about Mars-Pluto, and that's one that's like kind of like, come on, bro, that is too much. So where am I at time-wise? Yeah, so let's talk about synastry Mars Pluto hard aspects, and then we'll go into some composite ones because I can't not talk about that one. So I'll go fast with this too. So basically, okay, Mars Pluto, that is as intense and raw and volatile as it gets. The best sex possible. Also when it's in a composite chart, Mars conjunct Pluto in a composite chart, I've had it. The best sex ever, literally. But it's also very chippy. So there's this very raw energy that can bring out like the highest passion, but also the most volatile, I already said that word, even violent energy out of people. Like Mars and Pluto is the highest, like it's just like freak level, like sexuality and just atomic energy. But these people can fight a fuck ton. They can really butt heads, and it can literally be violent, right? It doesn't always become that way, but basically, it's like Mars versus Pluto, So it's like Aries versus Scorpio, and so I would say that there is this fusion of kind of like there's just themes of dominance. The sex is always a huge theme in these relationships, and the conjunctions like don't necessarily have such a bad energy. As long as there's an outlet, as long as there is, if they do create good attraction, but they can also lead to fights. They can lead to like quickly escalating fights or tempers flaring. When there's frustrations, those erupting right away, anything. But like when we talk about the squares, that's where you really see the big fights. That's where you really see the actual physical aggression, where, like I'm not saying like domestic violence all the time. I'm just saying that like big time, like really, really, really kind of triggering the other person's shadow, and then like both people kind of going at it, So it's like, it's not just like one side. And yeah, the opposition is also similar in that way, where it is, like there can be like that power dynamic, but then that great attraction, but also some fear involved or kind of included, right? So I would say that the main thing here is that the relationship is usually like a big part of it is not all the time is the power dynamics, right? So it can kind of shift back and forth. So this is like when people have this, they really have to be mindful of that and try to balance it, try to have good diplomacy, like kind of Aries Libra axis. So yeah, like and also just like bring out a lot of each other's fears. But yeah, so it's one of the ones where, I mean, in most stories I've heard about this are just like incredible sex, but then like massive fights, like kind of similar like the Mars one. But then also like this feeling that like at any moment things could like really turn violent psychologically. I haven't heard stories of domestic violence myself, but I've definitely heard about them. Okay, so now let's jump into some composite and end this. So okay. So, okay, composite Moon square Uranus. So basically, yeah, in the composite chart, the combined chart of any two people, I would say Moon square Uranus can be tough because there can be this real back and forth in the relationship. Like the actual life of the actual emotional kind of undertone of the relationship can be very unstable. It can be very exciting, but very unsustainable. So there can be like very high highs and very low lows. It can be like a roller coaster. There isn't really this like strong foundation, but it can also be very addicting, and very like kind of like off the, like irregular and eccentric in a way, right? So a lot of times what happens is that there's lots of breakups, but then there's reconciliations, and they can kind of come and like happen out of no, they can just happen out of nowhere, right? So and then it can kind of create this very ungrounded feeling of anxiety because neither partner really feels safe in the relationship, right? Because there's just like there can be this fast, you want a solid moon in the composite or solid IC, right? You want a foundational element to where like you want some Saturn, right? You want some Saturn, you want some even some, like a strong moon. Yeah, strong fourth house, Cancer energy, stuff like that. So yeah, like I guess examples of that is just like this, just like a client I had like describing the inconsistency is unbearable, and just like pretty much exactly what I just said, like just the ups and downs, how they would talk nonstop for days, then then the guy would disappear, and just kind of never knowing where the guy stood. That's one I remember. And then yeah, like just like another one, yeah, just like moving in after a month. That's very Uranian, right? Because moon represents where you live, Uranus. So they got together very quickly. They moved in after a month of knowing each other, and then they broke up by month 6, and then the guy just disappeared. Then he came back, right? It's that kind of thing. So yeah. Okay. Next one is composite Venus square Pluto. Did I not talk about Venus, Pluto? Wow. Damn. How did I make this list without... I'm tempted to make one more Synastry one. Maybe I'll do like composite / Synastry Pluto square Venus, because I can talk all... That is like such an important one. So hold on, what time am I at? Okay, so we are at 1.0741. Sorry, guys. So yeah, so okay, basically, like I'm gonna combine composite and synastry for this one. So basically, okay, so when these two clash, Venus and Pluto, and I have this in my natal chart, so it's something I grew up my whole life, probably until I was, probably until like the last, I don't know, since my Saturn return, like maybe yeah, probably took me till my Saturn return, maybe a little bit before that. Yeah, probably like, yeah. Especially the first 25-ish years, like it's a really hard one to deal with. But basically, like in synastry, when you have this, it's like the whole love fusing with obsession, right? Like this very, like there's a huge fear, like it's very very magnetic and instant attraction. There's this karmic feeling like I'm meant to be with this person, and it could spiral into obsession very quickly. And what's supposed to be love actually gets, you actually experience, so in these types of relationships, you actually experience your shadow, and in this case, like through the other person, in relationships. So, right. So it's very magnetic because Pluto is very sexy, like the energy of Pluto with Venus. But it brings up a lot of abandonment issues for people. so abandonment issues, emotional intensity, and it's very hard to kind of like escape it, or to not even escape. It's very hard to move past these relationships, to fully let go. So like in Synastry, like the Venus person, can feel very consumed by the Pluto person's power, right? Um, you know, at one moment, uh, like adored, and then feeling manipulated the next. And the Pluto person can feel kind of threatened. Like it's like almost like the Venus person like gets through them in a way, like that's what happens when your Pluto gets triggered, right? But there's also this kind of, it can be like very empowering because it is Venus. It's more smooth, so that's why it can be very addictive. But it can also be, this person gets me on such a deep level, but they're also so I'm so attracted to them. So there can be like this possessiveness and even suspicion that can come too, right? That's another element of it. So, yeah. So then in a composite chart, when you see Venus, Pluto in hard aspects, there is, yeah. So the relationship itself has a lot of those dynamics of power struggles, of passion, of the two people are meant to meet their own individual shadows or collective karmic shadows between them in their relationships, in that relationship. So even when like for example, when both partners want peace, there can be drama, and kind of like that reconciliation and just those cycles, right? So it really does take like I think for this one in a composite chart, it's better for people to meet, or in Synastry, it's probably better for people to meet when they've matured more. But when because like the energy can still exist, but you have more resources and more awareness around it, especially if you know astrology, psychology. But regardless, yeah, these ones are very, very addictive, very, very addictive, impossible to ignore, but rarely healthy to sustain. So, in terms of examples, I don't have these ones written down. Let me think. Um, yeah, I mean, I can just think of so many, like just that theme of like one person, like okay, I can think of like one relationship where they would spend all this great time together, everything would be all good, and then whenever like the girl would like, they didn't live together, so they'd spend like a few days together. Whenever the girl would go and do her own thing, back to her own her everyday life, the guy would like freak the fuck out, like, excuse my language. He would just get so suspicious, and like she was very Aquarian, very Uranian, so she just wanted, and they had great, like amazing time. Like they were like soulmate level. Like that's how they both felt when they were together. There was really not much drama. Like sometimes there was, but like they were very good together. Really, really good compatibility. So much fun together. Great romance, sex, banter, everything. But there's just like he would just get very, very, very clingy and very, very insecure, when he wouldn't hear from her for even like a little bit of time, and start getting paranoid and thinking that she's doing this, she's doing that, when really she was doing nothing. And eventually it led to them breaking up over the long term, because you know she just couldn't handle that, so and then they would get back together, and he would apologize and be like, I'm so sorry, like, like I need to work on myself. And then it would happen again. It was like this continuous thing. So she would just channel that separation anxiety, that abandonment issue and self-esteem issue that he had, that everything good was going to leave him. And then he actually became a self-fulfilling prophecy, is the sad part. So that's really like how she really opened up his Pluto, right? And let's think. Yeah, I think I've heard people talk about this as like feeling like they're under a spell, and like feelings of like hatred, but then not being able to let go. And yeah, it's just that theme of like fighting hard, loving hard, and then eventually like just a ton of passion and pain all at once. I remember a good one. So yeah, so this one client I had, so this was in their composite, and so basically they was it was it the I can't remember if it was square or conjunction. It's one of those two. I can't remember in the composite, right? I think it was a square, and every time she tried to end things, he would like show up at her job, or just like he'd not take no for an answer, but not like in okay, I was gonna say not in a creepy way. Like yes, you could say that's creepy, but like it was like, you know, with flowers and you know, with like not even like manipulative, like crying and like all that stuff, like really just like all consuming, you know, like you know, like you know, like I understand if you leave me, you know, I deserve it. I can't handle, you know, like, but like I love you so, all that stuff, right? But like the thing is, it was raw. It wasn't like he was manipulating. It was like it was that his Pluto was getting. I can't remember the exact like reasons, but like it's always like this cycle, you know, of like the one person messing up, and usually one person holds more of the power. Sometimes it does go back and forth, but usually one person. And when I say power, I mean, I don't mean like I mean like one person likes the other person, not necessarily like likes the other person more, but one person, um, I don't know, like exhibits more of those like you know, like hardcore reactions. Okay. Um. So let's see. Yeah. So then in composite, let's talk about let's talk about just the sun in the eighth house. How about that? We're so okay. So composite sun in the fifth in the eighth house. So I mean, I just noticed like obviously the eighth house is the you know is a Scorpio house. It's you know I just noticed that those relationships tend to be very karmic. That they tend to have this element of a lot of like you know, death, rebirth, transformation. A lot of shadow, taboo kind of energy, and a lot of transformation. But then it's also like a lot of times very linked to sex, and there's this real like tight vulnerability. Like it's like two souls becoming one type of energy. So it's very there's a lot of intensity, right? And usually that kind of overshadows like the balance and peace that's needed also. So they're very, you know, karmic relationships often, and this is just maybe my experience, like not my personally, but just seeing this is that the breakups can feel like actual like they're like horrible, like actual death, right? Um, and very karmic, and a lot of times, yeah, it is there is like crises. They're bonding through crisis. And it's not really like the calm seas one, right? So yeah, just like examples I can think of is just like couples who have this like you know like kind of like just talking about like how the relationship's like very psychological, um, you know, and like they kind of like see like like it's kind of like they pull each other in like each other's shadow sides, and like kind of mirroring that in each other. And yeah, like every time, like I remember one client, she was saying how like every time things were like kind of normal, kind of stable, something dramatic would happen. You know, it was like they couldn't exist without crisis, right? And yeah. So okay, so let's do composite. See, I'm like, do I want to repeat composite ones I already did for synastry? So I'm like looking at the ones I've done on my list. Okay, well we can do. Yeah, let's do composite sun, conjunct or square Chiron. Let's do that. And we'll probably finish it there. 121, 25. Damn, I've been going for a minute, guys. Okay, so maybe I'll do one more after this. We'll see. Might go for the full 90 minutes. So basically with this one, yeah, like there's just a lot of wounds. The identity of the relationship, which is the sun, right, in the composite chart, is, you know, and this is conjunct or square, right? And I guess you could say, you know, I don't know. I've seen it more with these two than the opposition. I haven't really seen the opposition that much, to be honest with y'all. There's just like a lot of old wounds that you know that are there. So it tends to like the composite chart with that, there tends to be like this theme of like the pain that the people have kind of being opened up by the other, right? Or by one another. So these can be very like healing relationships, like meant to be healing types of relationships. But what can happen is there can be like these cycles of like you know, triggering and hurting the other person, and then it can kind of get confused. Like, okay, is this like a soulmate type thing, or you know, like that whole thing. Like, you know, is it supposed? Are you supposed to just hurt each other? Is that part of like the twin flame or soulmate whatever experience? So yeah, like when there's a conjunction of Chiron and Sun and the composites, it's almost like the purpose of the relationship feels very linked to healing, but also going through old pain and trying to like kind of not circumvent it, trying to resolve it, right? But there can be a lot of suffering, so love and pain can become inseparable. And then with the square, there's more friction, right? In the sense that like one partner might really shine where the other one, in a way that is okay. How do I explain this? It's like one partner might have like a characteristic or act in a way or shine in a certain way naturally, in a way that triggers a pain associated that the other person has that has nothing to do with that person. So it's like if I am just being myself and I have, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Like I have like a natural talent or a natural ability to, you know, like let's just say like be confident and optimistic. I don't know. I can't. I'm at nearly minute 90. Mostly all improvised besides like a few notes. yeah, like, so I might start to feel like that other person, like, you know, have might, you know, it might really trigger, like remind them, like, shit, I don't have that ability. Like, I'm like this depressed, like, piece, like, you know, like always looking at things negative. So it's not necessarily, it can come off like that. Also, yeah, so it can sometimes be like tough to let go of this one. It's not as hardcore as the Pluto stuff, but like I've seen like with certain couples how like it can feel very therapeutic, but then it's like, yeah, it's just that balance between like, okay, you know, you're being forced to face things that you maybe were avoiding, but then at some point it's like, okay, like, are you supposed to just feel ripped open all the time? Like, it's just like very exhausting, you know? And like, where's the fun? Where's the right? So that's kind of how, like, I guess, like, these relationships are not all, like, I'm not saying they're toxic, all of them. I'm saying they can get toxic if there's no beauty in them, right? Because the sun in the composite is very important, right? It's really the identity of the relationship. So, yeah, just like that feeling of like being with someone, and it kind of going both ways in the composite chart, like where there's like, you know, just being normal brings up that feeling of that broken, that pain that everyone has, that feels like almost, you know, unfixable. Do I do one more? I guess I might as well do one more really quick because I already talked about this in Synastry, and it's just such an important one. So we'll just end it with composite Venus square Neptune. 127. Goddamn, my brain hurts. Okay. So just like I already talked about, Neptune, did I do square or hard aspect Venus? I did Venus, Neptune, hard aspect. So okay, now I'm just talking about the square, whatever. It's you can still apply this to, like, you know, conjunctions, oppositions, whatever. Basically, it's the same shit. It's like when you have this in a composite. Well, first of all, you know, the difference is that if you have Neptune conjunct Neptune in Synastry, like I did with that girl that I talked about earlier, then you're gonna have that in your composite, right? If you guys both have it, which is very rare, like that me and that girl both, my Venus is on her Neptune, her Venus is on my Neptune. That's like, you know, never gonna happen. So never mind. But yeah, the square in the composite is just a relationship that, like, you know, could feel like a soulmate, like meant to be relationship right away, and there can be like this whole idealization, and it can really come from both sides. Like, and the danger is that it's the composite chart, so there's less awareness from maybe one party. It's really like going both ways, and in Synastry, like, one person might have more awareness that the other person's idealizing them per se, but in this one, it could really blind both people. They could get married, or they could you know, think that, okay, this is like, it's there's just, it feels very spiritual, fated, enchanting. There's lots of, you know, beautiful, like synchronicities. Like I said, this is meant to be, but then it could all be built on an illusion. So and there could be lack of boundaries. You know, there could be like bad decisions made, like allowing one of the partner to move in super quickly, or you know, make like, oh, we're together officially right now, and you know, Neptune in a low vibe can bring energy vampires, right? That's another thing I forgot to say in the Synastry one. and even if you have it in your natal chart, like, you know, these types of aspects, that's why everyone should get a natal chart with me, is that, you know, if you have like Venus square Neptune, Venus opposite Neptune, you can really attract energy vampires who kind of like zap that, who sense that you have that, like, in that empathy and etc., right? And they want to zap it from you. So yeah, so I've seen a lot of people who have this in their composite chart have addiction and escapism in their relationship, like where they start drinking or doing, you know, smoking weed or doing drugs. Not judging anyone who does that, by the way. I'm just saying, like, where that becomes a big part of the relationship, or yeah, like, but like, and it can start really beautifully, where it's like they want to just like be together and just like be on this island, you know, just like this fantasy island, like within themselves. But then with everything Neptune, Venus, the fog clears and the humans become humans again, come down to earth. And then it's like, shit, now we're both addicted to drugs. No, I'm joking. No, but that's what happens with Neptune, right? So both partners can cling to the fantasy of, you know, what the bond could be, even if reality keeps proving that it isn't that, or that both people are not, you know, at that potential of who they need to be for it to be that thing, that beautiful future, right? Neptune is the ideal, the dream. So, and then, yeah, there can also be themes like, you know, one of the people like ghosting, vanishing, and kind of like, you know, chasing a version of that person that you saw that was seen in the imagination, in the head. I can't even talk right now. And the crazy thing is, I'm thinking about literally like ending this video, taking a 3-minute break, and then jumping on another video, which would be, I have like, you know, 3 or 4 different videos of synastry, like, you know, I have one that's karmic, one that's just like the best synastry aspects, and another one that's, I can't even remember. Is it worst? Yeah, well, this is talk. Yeah, I guess this one would be like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see if I do that. I went really hard with this one. This is what happens when you have Sun square Jupiter, Mercury square Jupiter, is that you think you're going to go for 30 minutes or 40, and you end up going for over 90. But yeah, like the big one is like, you know, like thinking that person, like I've heard it said so many times, I thought that this person was my twin flame, but, you know, I was always, you know, like, it was like I was just waiting for someone to show up who never did, really. But more so in the composite than anything else, I've seen it go both ways. Even though it rarely, like, more so both ways, even though it usually is more one way than the other. So, yeah. So yeah, so basically that's about it. So these are the aspects I've seen that can create the most toxic and obsessive and even heartbreaking relationships. So let me know if you have, in the comments, if you have some of these in your chart, or if you've, you know, seen these in other people, or your experience with them, or not in your chart, like if you you know, have had these in your synastry charts or composite. And if you do, it doesn't mean that you're doomed, right? It just gives, you just have that awareness, and there's always a higher, there's always, you know, the higher, I didn't really go into in this video, but there's, with each one of these, there's the higher awareness. There's the awareness, and then there's the way, there's always a way to take something difficult and make it better, right? Turn a hard asset into an aspect into an asset. And in my sessions, I really like help with that process as well. But yeah, even just having the awareness of it gives you the power to choose differently and to know that this is the dynamic at play, right? It's literally, Carl Jung talks about it, so many mystics talk about how massive just the importance is. So besides that, you guys know where to reach me if you guys want to get a reading. JesseInnocentastrology.com. JesseInnocent astrology, and on Instagram, Jesse Innocent Astro. I have most of my content on there, like probably 2,200 posts over 9 years. So yeah, I offer every kind of reading, and I offer one-on-one classes. So anyone interested, like I said, let me know. Email me, JesseInnocentastrology@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you like these videos. Leave a comment, anything like that. Like the video, whatever every YouTuber says. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed 1 hour 35. Damn. All right. Ciao.